Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and in the videos I've done lately talking about full range of motion generally being better for hypertrophy or muscle size, someone brought up the point of board presses, and they were basically arguing that your analogy kind of falls apart. I mean, what about the board press? A lot of top powerlifters use that. Isn't that different than what you're talking about? Isn't that an exception to the rule? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about it. All right, guys, when we're talking about the board press, you need to understand the board press would absolutely not be a good choice for chest hypertrophy. So it doesn't really become an exception to that rule. So maybe we should talk about what the board press actually does and doesn't, and why it's a sport-specific exercise. It actually doesn't even apply to most powerlifters today. It depends on what sort of powerlifting you compete in. The majority of lifters, I would never recommend a board press. All right, let me just put that out there. All right. Now, as far as that goes, why does a board press even exist? Well, it's a way to give you a soft touch on partials on the bench press. Because as I've said before, if you're doing any sort of partial rep just through the air, using nothing but air or a spotter to limit the range of motion, that's extremely dangerous. It will eventually injure you. You do it enough times, you will get hurt if you get strong enough. All right? It'll hurt you over time, and it can reduce joint health overall. You don't want to do that. So then people will say, well, I could limit the range of motion by using pins. Yeah, but pins beat your joints up because you're hitting steel on steel. Steel on steel, it tends to bang your joints up over time. It's a reason even you'll notice a lot of the machines, the hammer strength machines, have rubber stops. There's a reason for that. That's to keep you guys from using heavy weight and banging steel on steel anywhere. Plus the machines last longer, because they can just replace those rubber stoppers. But there's something to be said for a soft touch. That's why the boards exist. It touches something softer than steel that you then can compress in. It compresses into your chest, but it still limits the range of motion. And the reason boards are so useful is that they can set boards, standardized boards, 2x4s or 2x8s, 2x6s, whatever you're using, which are standardized in height. The reason for that, they can have an exact form of progression at different heights that are a standardized height that you could use from gym to gym in every gym that has board presses. All right, 1 board, 2 board, 3 board. So why exactly are they using them? Because this is for equipped benching. It's for guys who use a bench press shirt. That's why the board press exists. It allows you to replicate a strength curve more in line with what the shirt gives you. Because when you think about it, on a normal bench press, a pause bench, where are you the strongest at? The top. Where are you the weakest at? The bottom. The strength curve, it starts hardest at the bottom, very hardest at the bottom. That's why it's much, much harder to pause bench. And then guys who stop short of their chest, I've seen guys out there who rep and do half reps on the bench who probably do sets of 8 reps sometimes with 70 or 80 pounds more than they could ever pause bench if they touched their chest. They're doing like 8 reps with something way beyond what their real 1 rep max would be if they were actually bench pressing. And you guys have to understand, if you don't touch the chest, you are not performing a bench press. You're performing a different exercise. That's the standard form of a bench press. The bar touches the chest. Now, don't call it a bench press if you're not doing that. You're doing a different exercise. But your normal strength curve, you're strongest at the bottom, and the weight gets easier to lift as you go. All right? People who talk about sticking points, no, you get sticking points because the weight slowed down. If you were to measure from any given point, when you use boards or anything else, you're stronger with every board that you start off of. All right, you're stronger with every board that you start off of. The only reason you have sticking points in the middle is that you weren't strong enough to actually lift that weight. You started the weight too slow out of the bottom, and you lost inertia and it came to a stop, but you've already lost energy. So there's a misconception there that you get weaker at different points with the same weight. No, it's because you used up strength out of the bottom. All right, the exercise is actually easier. You could lift a heavier weight at any point if you started from there. The reason you get a sticking point with the same weight, it slows down, and you've already used up chest and shoulder energy starting the weight. Your chest and shoulders can't keep driving it if you've lost inertia and the bar stops moving, because you just didn't get it moving fast enough. But had you started at that position where you're sticking, you might have been able to do 50 pounds more than you got stuck with. And this is known. Anyone who studied this and looked at different starting points knows this. That's where the board press actually comes in. because when you're doing a shirted bench with a bench shirt, you have to compress the shirt and stretch it into your chest. All right, you actually have to pull the weight into your chest. This is one reason why so many equipped benchers say the lats are used to start the weight on the bench, that the lats are really, really important on the bench press. Why do they say that? Because they have to row the weight to their chest. I've seen guys in bench shirts, friends of mine who equip bench when I've trained with them in the past, they can't even touch their chest with 300 pounds. They're not strong enough with their bench press shirt on to get the bar to touch their chest with 300 pounds. They can't row that much weight to their chest. It won't actually reach. So think about that for a minute. That's how much tension these shirts create. And they create it in a curve. You sometimes need 400 pounds on the bar to even compress the shirt, with you pulling on the bar to press it into your chest. So it's like a spring that you're loading into your chest, and then they launch it up. Well, that spring has a curve. So actually on the equipped bench, the point where you actually are lifting the real weight on your own is near the top of the lockout. It's actually the bar, because of the springing and the shirt pressing up and compressing, it puts the most tension at the bottom, and then as it goes up, the shirt is adding less and less force. So the strength curve is reversed. It's hardest at the top and you're easiest at the chest. So in order to train that, to facilitate training that, why do the boards exist? Because you can train the different boards. And what you're going to find, because you're starting at different points, the more boards you use, the further you start from the chest, the heavier the weight you can use, because you're moving the weight through the strongest point, because you get stronger as it goes up because of the anatomic angles. It requires you to produce less force to move 300 pounds from here than it does from here. And if you go even further up, it takes even less force for you to move 300 pounds, so to get it started. So by using the different boards, you can add weight with each one. So you'll be testing your maxes and your strength curves and training those strength curves at different heights so that you get used to handling heavy loads. And the reason that's important is because guys don't want to wear their shirt all the time. Shirts wear out, they're expensive, they require sometimes 3 people to put you inside of one. So every time you bench press, you got to have a team of guys to put you in the shirt. They tear your skin up, they mark you, you look like you've been beat with a whip a lot of times when you wear a bench shirt. So they use the board press to facilitate training that strength curve, so that you train the true strength at any given point with the board, right? Because if you can bench 315 off your chest from a pause, you might be able to do 340 off the one board. You might be able to do 375 or 365 off the two board. You might be able to do 400 off the four board for reps. So by doing and training each of those different ranges, they're using a heavier and heavier weight as they train further away from the chest. So they're going to get to the point to where they can use the weights sometimes at the different points that are going to replicate the strength curve that they're going to have to produce while wearing the shirt. So they're going to have to produce the same force that they will to move that way that they will with the shirt on, because it is making you take a heavier weight the higher you go up, because the shirt is adding less and less. So the board press is designed and used specifically by equipped benchers. It is absolutely a terrible hypertrophy tool for your chest. Think about that. It takes your chest more and more out of the equation, but so does a shirted bench press. So of course no one's using it for hypertrophy. Why would you use it for that? I would say it gives you the most hypertrophy, depending upon what board you're using, is actually not going to be that great. It's going to work your interior delts more. It's going to put more emphasis on the front delts than the chest. And it's going to put a lot more emphasis on the two smallest heads of the triceps. Now a lot of guys will be like, well, board presses are great for triceps. Well, no, board presses are great for the two smallest heads of the triceps, the lateral head and the medial head. Your long head is not going to get worked effectively at all using a board press. And the long head's the biggest head and sometimes the hardest one to get growing. So it's not even a fantastic hypertrophy exercise for the triceps. It is for certain parts of the tricep. So when we talk about these things of using partials, these are being done in a very sport-specific manner. The board press is not a good hypertrophy tool. I sure as hell wouldn't recommend anyone use it to grow their chest. A pause bench on the chest, where you pause from a dead stop on every rep on your chest with your scapula retracted, is how you would be bench pressing if you wanted size. It sure wouldn't be the mid-range stuff where people do partials, because it's just using less pectoral. Your pecs have to work the hardest when they're stretched at the very bottom of the exercise and they have to get the weight started. Pause bench. Pause bench is probably the best variation of the bench press for building up your chest. And like I said, I sure as hell wouldn't be recommending a board press for that. So again, people need to understand there are sport-specific applications where partials, controlled partials done in the right environment, can massively aid you in a sport-specific endeavor. But they absolutely are not the best way to gain muscle mass. All right, they're there to give you certain strength curves or help with joint angle specificity. But you will usually, 9 out of 10 times on an exercise, you will get the best muscle growth by training the muscle through the full range of motion. That's what's going to give you, most of the time, the best possible muscle growth. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.